Good morning. How you doing? It's Mr. R2. We are back in person. Hope that you like the videos that I had set up for you in order for you to watch during the holiday season, because I took a little break, but the break was intentional. It allowed me to reset, and the break was putting me to where I am right now. And there is something that I want to teach you as I allow myself to be taught as well, because the one thing that I really like is when I'm learning these words and learning these lessons and presenting it to you, I'm also taking the opportunity to learn something even greater and better about myself. So as you can see, today's topic is pivot to the moon. Today's topic is pivot to the moon. As you're watching right now, give me the emoji, whether it's a thumbs up or a sunshine emoji, a smiley face emoji, whatever it is, that is how you feel right now. Today's message of pivot to the moon is really going to help you out, because it gave me that aha moment. It created that epiphany for me as I begin to learn more about a pivot, and put me in a position to as well learn how to pivot to the moon and what does moon mean to me, creating what moon can mean for you. So let's get into today's lesson of pivot to the moon. All right, so let's jump into it. Pivot to the moon. Pivot to the moon is really making a decision. And what are you doing with that decision, and what are you doing at that moment of the decision as well? So as you know, on this platform, we take you to the definition of the word, and then we take it back to the etymology of it as well, the origin as well, just so you can learn more about it, and then we take it back forward. So I'm going to tell you about the rocket and how the rocket works. How does it get to the point to where it's ready to take off? And as you can see, I want you to pay attention to this, because what it's going to do is going to allow you to learn more about it. And then you're going to see this playback again at the end. So the rocket, as you can see, the rocket will launch and keep speeding up as long as the force pushing it upward, which is the thrust. The rocket will launch and keep speeding up as long as the force pushing it upward is greater than the force pulling and pushing it downward, which is the gravity and the drag. I will say that again. The rocket will launch and keep speeding up as long as the force pushing it upward is greater than the force pulling and pushing it downward. All right, so now let's go into the definition of pivot. So the definition of pivot is the central point, pin, or the shaft of which a mechanism turns. The point, pin, or the shaft on which a mechanism turns. So if you understand what I'm talking about right now, go ahead and put the word pivot inside the chat. P-I-V-O-T. Put pivot inside the chat, because we're going to turn this corner. We're going to turn this corner and take it home and bring it home to you, to where you can understand, where are you at in your life? Where are you at in your pivot? Have you begin to turn in a direction that is going to allow you to get to that point? Now, going back to the second definition of pivot, is a person or thing that plays a central part in an activity. A person or thing that plays a central part in an activity. What part are you playing in your pivot? What activities are you doing that is going to play a role, a positive role, or a turning point role into your moon? What is your responsibility in your pivot? Only you can answer that. Only thing I'm doing is putting it out there to allow you to see it for yourself and to examine it for yourself. Now, the etymology of pivot is poya, which means point, P-U-Y-A, point. Because again, remember, at The pivot, which is a person or thing that plays a central part in an activity. Central, just like you hear someone say he or she or they have pivot at the drop of a dime. That's that point. At what point have you pivoted, or at what point in your life that got you to the point to where you're ready for that pivot? So remember, in the definition, it talks about the thrust. The thrust need to be greater than the weight. So what does that mean for you? I want you to know that your trust in yourself, your trust in your decision need to be greater than the weight that you're putting on yourself. Your trust in the constant understanding of the movement and the motion and where you're striving to go has to be greater than your fears. The thrust, remember the rocket, in order for the rocket to thrust up, it needs to be greater than the thrust needs to be greater than the weight of the rocket itself. So you're going to have to understand that you're going to have to trust yourself greater than the fears of where you're about to grow. You're going to have to thrust yourself forward and allow your fears to be behind you. Don't allow your fears to pull you. Don't allow your fears to outweigh the trust in the direction that you're striving to go, because that is going to make things much better for you when you understand that your thrust or your trust outweighs the need. And the momentum of the rocket is what keeps it going up or going in a direction towards the moon. And let's break that down into another term. At that moment, because remember the etymology of it, the etymology is going into the point. At that point, at what moment where you make that deciding factor that there is something that you want that is greater than where you are right now, and at that moment are you pivoting in a direction that is going to take you to where you actually ultimately suppose or want to be. That is your momentum. And after you begin to take that motion forward, allow that momentum to put you in a position to keep moving. And you're only going to get there when you allow the motion to drive you in a direction that is going to be beneficial for you. And I want you to trust in yourself, that the decision that you're making that is going to be better for you, that you are making it in that moment, and you stand firm in that moment in the decision that you're making. So now let's go ahead and take it back home. Let's take it home to the moon, because I want you to make the move. That's the aim of the moon. Pivot to the moon. But your pivot won't get to the moon if you don't make the move. Your pivot won't allow you to get to that point if you do not make that move, and you make that move in that moment and trust in the moment that you're taking that is going to make the move. Allow your fears to stay behind you. Allow your self-doubt to stay behind you. And knowing that the direction that you're going, you trust yourself enough to make that split decision that's going to put you in that moment of decision and make the move. So let's go to the first O. I want you to stand on the principles of the decision that you're making, and do not be afraid in making that decision, because the rocket won't reach the moon until it makes the move of the thrust or the trust that's going to allow you to do what? Stand on the principles and stand on the firm foundation on why you made that decision in the first place. You want to start a new task? Read a new book. You want to get to a new place? Study. You want to allow yourself to learn in the process? Then allow yourself to be steadfast and unmovable in that process and stand on the principles of the decision that you're making to get to the moon. And don't be afraid, because the trust and believe in the momentum of the moment that got you to the point of making that move, and stand firm on that principle. And the second one is do it on purpose. Make that decision on purpose, because a purposeful decision has more value than you being afraid of why you're making the decision, because remember, you're going back to the principles of the decision that you're making. Don't be afraid of it. because that fear could minimize your thrust. Because when the fear is minimizing the thrust, then that means that it is greater. The weight of the thought of the doubt, or the weight of the thing that is holding you back, is greater than the thrust. So therefore, the rocket will not take off because you didn't trust yourself enough. You didn't stand firm on your principles. You did not stand firm on the purpose, on why you made that pivot to learn something greater, on why you made that pivot to go away from something, on why you made that pivot to make it bigger and better. And the last thing that I want you to do, in order for you to get to the moon, you're going to have to do it without regrets. You're going to have to stand firm on those principles without the regrets. You're going to have to stand firm on the purpose without regrets. And you're going to have to understand that you're going to have to make that move to pivot to the moon, to reach that goal, to reach that pivotal moment, and do it without regrets. And remember, a rocket will launch and keep speeding up as long as the force pushing it upward, again, which is the thrust, or your trust, you will always make it to the moon as long as you keep that momentum, and the force of pushing you upward is greater than the force of pulling and pushing it downward. Don't allow the gravity to hold you back. Don't allow someone to drag you back, because remember, as you can see, the force of pushing and pulling cannot be greater than the trust that you have in a decision that you're making that is going to take you to the moon. Making more money is going to take, if that is what is going to take you to the moon, then make your decision to learn more about wealth. If you want to go back to school, make that decision and stand firm on that decision that you're making. Don't allow your self-doubt, don't allow your lack of ability that you have inside of your head to pull you back. That gravity or that drag is what is not going to allow you to thrust forward and to allow that momentum to put you in a position that is going to make you successful. Pivot to the moon. And as you pivot to the moon, know and believe that trust has to start with you and your principles and the purpose and the decision that you're making. Don't be afraid, because when you are afraid of your decision, then you're allowing the gravity to drag you back. You're allowing the gravity to drag you down. Y'all be blessed. Consistency is currency. And pivot to the moon.